Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. Please visit our website, cscatlanta.org, for a complete list of live and recorded events. We invite you to sign up for our newsletter to stay connected to all future programs.
Hi, I'm Chef Kip with Cancer Support Community Atlanta, and today we are talking about gut health. We're going to be making a microbiome bowl that is full of whole grains, good high fiber sources of protein, lots of vegetables and tasty sauces, and a little bit of fermented food as well. I would call it Szechuan inspired tempeh. I have a feeling if you go to the Szechuan province of China, you'll never find balsamic vinegar. And that's fine. And I've been perseverating a little bit this morning on balsamic vinegar in Asian recipes because I think it's turning into like a fusion thing because it's showing up in several different places now that I think about it. We've got a grain bowl that we're gonna put together. You'll see that the very front of your page looks less like a recipe and more like a list. What I want you to know is that the list of all the things on here is a really wonderful jumping off point. And you can go in all kinds of different directions. If we flip the next couple of pages, you'll also see that there's a couple of different sauces in there. We've got this miso sesame vinaigrette. I wanted to make sure that we featured miso or as many different fermented products and items with probiotics. We're gonna talk about prebiotics and probiotics and postbiotics in just a little bit. So the sesame miso vinaigrette, this is not my recipe. This is pulled directly from well-known recipe author Kenji Lopez-Alt, but I tested it. It's delicious. Notice it also has balsamic vinegar in it, which I think is funny. Let's see. We also have peanut sauce in there because that's a good one to have in your back pocket. Good and easy and tasty to have around for bowls like this. And then if you're going in more of a Mediterranean direction, perhaps, the yogurt tahini dressing I threw in there as well. So let's get into what I chose to do today. So when I'm building a bowl, and when we think about our gut microbiome, what we're talking about is all of the beneficial bacteria that lives in your large intestine. And they are so important because essentially, they are the first line of defense when it comes to your immune system and to sort of well managing inflammation in your body. And there are so many disease processes where inflammation is the start, right? So the gut microbiome is all these billions of bacteria that are in your colon, and they're sitting right on the edge of your lining of your colon. And then the next layer is a single cell layer of cells called the epithelial cells, and then just below that is all of your immune response cells, right? And so what we want to do is if we are keeping all those beneficial bacteria really happy, they're preventing things from getting in that are not supposed to get in. Now, if something gets in that's not supposed to get in, then that's what we have our immune response for. But what we don't want to be doing is activating our immune response on a chronic level all the time, right? So ways that we can keep all of the gut bacteria really happy. Number one is gonna be eat more things with live active cultures in them, right? So we're thinking about yogurt, we're thinking about kimchi, we're thinking about sauerkraut, all sorts of different directions you can go. And those things are just sort of the jumping off point. So one way is eating the actual live active cultures, right? The other thing that you want to do is get prebiotics. Prebiotics are basically the food for the probiotics. They're the food for the bacteria that's in your gut, right? So they're going to thrive and be happier if we've got prebiotics. So there's lots of different vegetable sources of prebiotics, onions and garlic, lots of different vegetables and fiber, right? That's all gonna keep that gut microbiome happy. And then postbiotics is something that I saw on a label recently and I was like, what is that? Because I'd never heard the term. So then I went and looked it all up and I was like, what's going on here? And I was like, oh, I knew what that was. I just had never known it called that. So this is what you're gonna get when you have a food that has been fermented, right? So think about, you know, sourdough or even a traditionally made soy sauce or the tempeh that we're gonna cook today. But the live active culture is not live anymore because I just put it in a pan and cooked it, right? So, or I put it in the case of sourdough bread, I put it in the oven and I cooked it, right? So now those live active cultures, the cells are still there, they're just not alive anymore. It turns out they still have value in our gut. They still are gonna help you produce short chain fatty acids. They're still gonna have some benefit. It's not quite the same level, right, as a live active culture, right? But it's not nothing just because it's dead, right? So I've heard them called, a lecture at a conference I was at in the fall, I heard them called ghost probiotics or zombie probiotics, which I thought was kind of funny, which is basically to say that it was once a live thing, it's not live anymore, it's still got some good benefit in your gut. So that's why eating something like tempeh that has been fermented, even sourdough bread or miso is in a lot of things and it's got live active cultures in it, but in some applications you end up heating it up and cooking it. So there's still some great value there. You can cut it however you want to cut it. You could cut it into cubes, you could cut it into strips. I'm going to cut it into strips because that's the way I learned this particular recipe. Calls for cutting it into about 1/4 inch strips. I can usually get about 20 or so. Every tempeh, at least in this country, that I've ever purchased comes in this exact shape and size, right? Tofu sometimes comes in a bigger block or a little block or sometimes packaged differently, but it's always like this in my experience. Tofu. It's usually, sometimes it's in the produce section, it's gonna be refrigerated, but the same place that you find tofu, now not the shelf-stable tofu, like the tofu that's in the water, the liquid, that's refrigerated, you'll usually find this. And the packages, this is just one particular brand, but it always has this like clear backing so you can see the back of it. All right, so we're gonna heat our pan up to probably medium high because we wanna get some color on this tempeh. Yeah.
Can you hold up one of those slices? So
Yeah. So I've cut it about yay thick, right? All right, so I've got a little bit of olive oil here, not olive oil, avocado oil. And we're gonna just get it going in our pan, coat the bottom of the pan. You don't wanna be, you don't necessarily need to like deep fat fry it, but you want enough that you'll get some nice browning on here. And then we're just gonna I'm gonna let that heat just a little bit. Then we're gonna throw these guys in here and hopefully start to get a little, I'm hearing just a touch of a sizzle, so that's good.
Is it medium heat?
Medium high, you could go medium high, because you want it to get some, and you'll see that, just like a lot of other things, if you're trying to get something to brown, because what happens when you try to, so you can see, it's got some room in there to move around. What happens if you're trying to brown things and you get too much in your pan, and this goes for whether you're roasting something on a sheet pan or cooking something in a pan, is that steam and liquid is the enemy of browning, right? And if you get too much in there together, you start to create steam, and then that's gonna impede your browning. So you want things to be able to have some space to sort of move around a little bit. And really all we're trying to do here is just get a little toasty brown crust on it. I killed the heat so I didn't burn it, but we're gonna get the heat going back up again. Because now we're gonna build our sauce. So what I wanna do is I'm actually gonna pull this out and get the sauce going, and then we'll throw it back in there. If you happen to walk by earlier and you saw this pot over here, that's what's been hanging out over there, reducing. Let's get into the rest of it. So this water was warm before, but it's probably not warm anymore, but it doesn't matter too much. I've got my 2 tablespoons of miso. This recipe calls for white miso. Use whatever kind of miso you find or you have. If it's red miso, if it's barley miso, it does not matter. They all just have different flavors, right? White miso tends to be a little bit more mild. Red miso tends to be a little more powerful and punchy. So we're gonna add a little bit of water to it just to loosen it up. I like to go ahead and just get it in the pan and then just get all of the rest of your ingredients in the pan. So that was soy sauce. Tamari or shoyu, by the way, is just traditionally fermented styles of soy sauce. Mirin is Japanese cooking wine. You could use any other cooking wine. You could skip it if you don't want to buy a bottle of mirin. It's got a little bit of sweetness. You could probably use like sherry or something like that if you had that laying around. Balsamic vinegar, not traditionally Chinese, so I would call this a fusion recipe for sure. But I will say that I think that food evolves to the place where it is, right? All right, brown rice syrup. Let me talk a little bit about this. Brown rice syrup is in this recipe, and you don't have to use brown rice syrup. You can find it with other baking goods at some grocery stores, definitely more at like a Whole Foods. What's nice about it is that you can use it in other recipes like you would use honey, but it is much less sweet than honey. In fact, out of curiosity, I looked at how many grams of sugar were in this compared to honey. So the serving size for this is 2 tablespoons, and it has 17 grams of sugar. The serving size for this honey is 1 tablespoon, and it has 17 grams of sugar. So this is exactly half as sweet as honey is, right? So yeah, if you're looking for still, to add a little sweetness to things, but maybe you don't want quite as much sweetness, this might be an idea. You could throw maple syrup in here. You could throw honey in here. You could throw a little brown sugar in here. But we like the sweetness in here because it's gonna caramelize up and make a nice sort of sticky sauce that's gonna glaze the tempeh. And then the last thing we got here is a little bit of that toasted sesame oil. Now that this sauce is starting to come together, I'm gonna turn my heat back up a little bit because I want it to start to kind of I want that syrup in there, all the sort of liquid to start to concentrate, and it to get sort of a sticky glaze. Now, you see that the recipe has a variable amount of water in it for the miso. I went with the lowest amount because I just like it when the sauce is really like thick and sticky and glazy. If you want a looser sauce or you want to have more volume to your sauce, more water is where you might want to go. All right, so we've got our tempeh back in here, we've got our sauce, and we're just gonna let it glaze and reduce. Get into building our bowl. I'm gonna let this reduce a little bit. Let's get over to our dessert. So chia seeds are something that have been eaten in Mexico and Central America and South America for some time, not just smeared on the outside of a terracotta animal. They are high in fiber, they're high in protein, and what's fun that happens to them, what made them do the chia thing that they did on the pet, is that when you put them in liquid, they gel, right? They create this gel, and then you would smear that gel on your terracotta animal. Well, that gel property has great culinary properties as well, right? Because that gel is gonna firm something up the same way gelatin would firm something up. So, for this chia pudding, again, I pulled this recipe from justinesnacks.com. I love her recipes. If you're looking for good, interesting, plant-forward food, not all plant-based food, highly recommend you check her out. So, you can make chia pudding where the liquid is just any kind of liquid that you don't have to do yogurt. Of course, I chose yogurt for the the probiotics that are in the yogurt. And when it comes to getting the texture of your chia pudding, I will say the first time I made this, it was a little bit loose. And so this time I bought Greek yogurt. It's still, the ones that I made for you guys are a little looser than my personal preference. So I would say, and you can fix that if you didn't make enough for 35 people. If your chia pudding, when you make it, is looser than you want it to be, add more chia seeds and come back in 30 minutes, right? If your chia pudding is too tight, add more liquid, stir it up, loosen it up. So it's very, very forgiving. But I had already portioned these into 35 cups when I looked at it this morning. So we're gonna have a looser pudding experience. Greek yogurt we love because all they've done with Greek yogurt is take regular yogurt and strain it, strain some of the whey out. And what that does is create a thicker, creamier product, but it also concentrates all the nutrients that are in there. So you've got a higher protein content, which is great if that's something that you are concerned about, especially during treatment. All right, so we've got a 1/4 cup of chia seeds. We're just gonna mix those with our vanilla yogurt. The first time I also made this, I made it with plain yogurt, so then I just sweetened it and I just added honey until it tasted the way I wanted it to taste. All right, so we're gonna mix in our chia seeds. We're gonna mix in our milk. She says a cup of plant-based milk. Obviously, this is not plant-based. It has dairy yogurt. You can do whatever you want to do. If you want to use regular milk, use regular milk. If you want to use plant-based yogurt, use plant-based yogurt. If you want to mix and match, do whatever you want to do. The idea here, though, is that yogurt, some, milky liquid, and the chia seeds, and then we're gonna add in our flavor. So a little bit of, she calls for vanilla and almond extract. I think there's already vanilla in here, but the almond extract is what I feel like really is clutch. And then just a little bit of cinnamon. And I'm actually gonna grab, I didn't grab it earlier, but I feel like a whisk is a nice option here. The chia seeds will sometimes clump a little bit, and that's it, right? So you can see it's really loose and soupy right now. It's kind of like melted ice cream, but it's gonna firm up. In 30 minutes or an hour, you're gonna have something more firm. Overnight is really where the magic happens. And then the sky is the limit with flavors for chia pudding, right? Go in whatever direction you wanna go. Throw some berries on top. We're gonna serve it here as a dessert, but as I was testing this recipe, we ate it for breakfast at my house several days. This is shiitake mushrooms that I sliced until they were about the same thickness as this tempeh. And I put on a sheet pan. This is about 4 sheet pans worth put together, okay? Because when the mushrooms, of course, the shiitake mushroom caps were pretty big caps, right? They take up a lot of real estate, and that same thing I just told you about how moisture is the enemy of browning applies here, because mushrooms are mostly water. And so all I did was drizzle a little olive oil, sprinkle with salt and pepper, put it in a 450-degree oven. I check on it in about 10 minutes to give it a stir, and then I check on it every 5 minutes after that.
Was it fresh or was it raw?
Yeah, they were fresh.
Fresh.
Yep. And you can hear they're nice, crispy, and all that flavor is so concentrated and awesome. I will say that crispy is not gonna last till tomorrow. Quinoa before. Everybody, it's easy peasy, right? It's just like brown rice, but faster and easier and more forgiving. And higher in protein. We like that. But this is naturally high in protein, which is great. And so high in protein and fiber. And that is one of the things I love about getting plant-based sources of protein, is that you get the fiber as well, which is a great benefit. All right, so we've got our quinoa. We're just gonna pile that down on the bottom. All right, and then we're gonna grab some of our tempeh here. And then we're gonna surround our tempeh with all the other things that we've got going on here. So we've got some beautiful shredded or matchsticked bell peppers. We got some cucumbers. We got some carrots. You can do it sort of Cobb salad style where you put everything in piles, or you can just sprinkle everything kind of crazy style. However you like. You can hear those are nice. I love that sound. And crispy. We'll do a little scallions on here. Sauerkraut is not necessarily, super traditional in this way, but I think the flavors are gonna be delicious and tasty. I'm gonna send around some sauerkraut in bowls for you guys to apply however you like. And we'll just finish with a little sprinkle of black sesame seeds here.
Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. If you're interested in other live or recorded programs, please visit the online program tab of our website, cscatlanta.org, or follow us on Facebook. We'll be sharing additional information on upcoming programs.